Well, hi there, everybody. Chase Raz here, and doing my first video on governance, Zilliqa governance. So I'm going to have to create a new section on the YouTube page for this. I'll just use the tutorial template for now. I have to create a news desk one. What about that? But we have some new governance proposals to take a look at. So I'm at governance.zillica.com, and I'm going to click through into our gZIL proposals. There are two of them that we want to look at here. One's a zip 12, one's a zip 18, and as I told Colin Miles the other day when we were speaking, I'm not currently the go-to guy to ask how governance proposals work. The actual structure of how they're implemented, which ones get all of that, I'm learning, and as I learn, I'll relay that information to you. But in this video, what I want to do is I want to take a look at the proposal itself. Which is called Simple Transaction Spamming Protection. So I'm going to bring that up. I'm just going to bring one of them up. The text is the same. So first and foremost, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Give me just a moment. The text of this thing here is what we want to start looking at. But before we do that, the author of this proposal is YUSA 44. Let me bring that up here on the other screen. YUSA 44. In fact, let's move it over so we can get a better view. I can't move it over so that we can get a better view right now. I'll try to, I know that's really small, so I'll read it. It's Julian Sarcher. Julian Sarcher. Now, a lot of you may know Julian as our ZILgraph guy, right? He's the guy who runs ZILgraph. You can find the GitHub repository for ZILgraph, and it's Julian's. You can see that he's the guy here. But what's interesting here, what's interesting about all of this is that Julian is the person who tested Zilliqa's network capability and spent less than $200 sending 1 million transactions across the network within a matter of a few hours, part of a day. This was a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago. And so this is the guy who did that to test the network, to test its throughput, to test all of that, is the one proposing the simple transaction spamming protection. That's interesting. And a source I spoke with earlier today, not from the Zilliqa team, not from Zilliqa Research directly, but confirmed to me that the Zilliqa folks were to some degree involved in the writing of this proposal. So this is coming from a quite interesting place. The person who tested transaction spamming on Zilliqa, and potentially with some influence and at least tacit approval from parts of the Zilliqa team. Again, I don't have any of that confirmed from the Zilliqa team themselves, so I'll leave it in that vague language. I'm going to skip the arguments for and the arguments against this proposal for right now because we can all read them, and I want to focus in on what the proposal actually is. So let's take a look at it here. The idea is we are being faced with whether we want to increase the minimum gas payment for ZIL to ZIL transactions. For ZIL to ZIL transactions, meaning you're moving ZIL from one wallet to another, that this would increase the minimum gas cost from 0.002 ZIL, which it currently is, to 0.1 ZIL. I initially had a yellow flag with that, right? Because I'm thinking that is a 50x increase. That is a lot, right? So, the actual dollar amount in US dollars and Singapore dollars and whatever currency you want to translate to is still fairly minimal, right? 0.1 ZIL, a tenth of a ZIL. But that is a 50x increase over where we have, and I have some concern over that. It gives me pause. Let me put it that way. My initial inclination would be to say, well, let's do this in smaller increments. Let's maybe 10x it or 20x it at first, and then we could consider moving up to something like this. But the reality is, the thing we need to know, whether you're a token holder or whether you're a business involved in blockchain, is that this type of change requires a node update. And when we have node updates, right, that's just another push of code. That's another chance for something to break or go wrong. I know we do these things all the time in updates anyway, but there's that consideration that this would involve a node update. So the second bullet point here on the abstract is smart contract execution will remain as is. That's excellent. This isn't going to impact the price of sending your ZRC2 tokens. This isn't going to impact the price of engaging with smart applications that are out there. Let's say you're going to, mint an NFT on Mintable. This isn't going to impact those. So there's not a lot of harm to business applications initially, or at least any that I'm seeing right now from my vantage point. And due to the increase, this is the third one here, and I want to read it verbatim. So sorry, we'll play kindergarten reading time here. Due to the increase in gas fees for normal transactions, the inflation rate of ZIL can further decrease as more gas fees in ZIL will be burned. The idea here is the more that transaction costs, the more we're burning. Now, that when we burn ZIL on Zilliqa, I think this is a point that I've learned over the past few weeks that I think everybody should know, that should be more transparent out there, is it doesn't go away. Some networks, it goes away. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, go in the comments, correct me if this is a mistake, but my understanding currently, based on direct information from the Zilliqa team, is that that gets locked away. What's burnt gets locked away and is the pool, if you will, for future staking rewards and for future things like that once the initial supplies have all run out. That's my current understanding. So the last part of that bullet point is, thereby this accelerates the circular nature of ZIL tokenomics. I don't have an issue with any of this, right? I do have a concern, so yeah, minor issue, I guess you could say, with the 50x proposal. I don't know, I'm not seeing why it was calculated as such. Somebody had to think about that, right? Why is it not 0.05? Why is it not 0.01? Why is it 0.1? Right? That information I'd really like disseminated through the community to find out what that particular information was. As I look through, you can see it's mentioned right from normal gas transmission from 1 to 50, just confirming what we know, but I'm not seeing anything about the logic of why. Now, I ran through a couple business scenarios, and I want to run through these with you at the risk of running long and losing some of you. Sorry if you have to go. It makes me sad. But I do want to run through a couple of business scenarios that I was thinking about that this might impact. Spoiler, it ended up not impacting virtually anything. My first thought was, as Zilliqa expands, one of the things that brought me to crypto in the first place was I was looking at microfinance. How can my small part-time business get involved in microfinance? I never really found a solution, but you can imagine how that type of search brought me into crypto, how that type of search introduced me to the concept of blockchain I already knew, but brought me back and got me involved to some degree. One of my first coins I was involved with was Electroneum, and it's still around. Zilliqa has worked with Electroneum. I don't have any information from the Zilliqa or Electroneum teams, but I know they've worked together at some point, at least had communication. Not on blockchain necessarily, but Zilliqa did give away credit on Electroneum's job board, this AnyTask right here. Sometimes I'm a little bit harsh on Electroneum. I currently don't hold any. I used to. I'll put that disclaimer out there. But right, these are the types of things that got me in, and I know a lot of you are into TEL. TEL is a big one for a lot of you right now, this direct mobile-to-mobile payment. But this whole concept of global remittance, low cost, person-to-person, it's big for a lot of us, and I think it's only a matter of time before Zilliqa and the developer network, and through ZILhive and Zilocracy and independent third parties, I think it's only a matter of time before we end up somewhere like here. But does this proposal impact a potential use case, such as having one of these types of remittance tools on Zilliqa? And my answer is really no. For the most part, these would be ZRC2 tokens. That fee isn't subject to change by this proposal. It's very rare that I would imagine we'd want to run some type of payment system like that through Zilliqa utility tokens themselves. With Pillar coming online, I really think it's even more rare, because then we'll be able to mint stablecoins, and that makes much more sense for international small remittance between user to user. A lot of the big use case there, as you see from RSR, and you see from others, is having a tool to fight hyperinflation, or really at this point, even inflation that most of our economies are facing. But ultimately, the more I went down this path, these types of tokens are likely to be ZRC2 and not impacted. And the smart contracts aren't impacted. So use case one solved for. The other one I started thinking about is, what about the applications themselves that are issuing these tokens, but the same thing applied. So what I'm looking at here is I pulled up on ViewBlock package portal. Sorry, these are people's wallets. I'm just grabbing a random transaction here. I have no idea who they are, but somebody received 2 port from package portal. The transaction fee was 97 cent, or excuse me, not 97 cent, 0.97 gZIL. And you can do this if you want on ViewBlock, or you can take my word for it. Transaction after transaction after transaction. So like the proposal says, I didn't call this out before, but it does point out that the transfer of coin to coin, ZRC2 to ZRC2, it's about 1 gZIL right now. It can be higher. I did a limited test and I sent myself some XSGD, and it was higher, but that's because I agreed to pay more gas. So business to business really isn't changing. I thought about what happens with remote workforces if we start wanting to transmit payroll across the globe and then convert into local currency. Again, not something that's a concern here, because in that scenario, you're thinking, all right, if you're remitting 1 million gZIL, why in the world would you be doing it in 1 million transactions? This would be more like, we're going to send X amount of that in one pool to one region, Y amount to another region. And so you're looking at 0.1 gZIL for each transaction, wallet to wallet. So then those wallets could do the conversion to local currency or whatever it is that, again, Pillar could support with US dollar stable coin, that XSGD could already support with the Singapore stable dollar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I really was leaning no towards this at the beginning, I have to admit, but the only reason was because of my concern over being a 50x increase. Do I still have that concern? It makes me uneasy, but that's a personal problem. The reality is this doesn't impact very much the person who tested the network capability and tested the ability to do transaction spamming, which could cripple a network, could absolutely bring a network to its knees. And Zilliqa is super cheap for that. If somebody wanted to target the network, it would be extremely easy with a small amount of money, with only thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, to attack all of Zilliqa and try to break it temporarily. For a network that cannot be broken in a lot of different ways, this new transaction vulnerability being opened up, being showcased in other parts of the blockchain space right now, I'm not 100% yes right now, but I will say I'm solidly leaning yes at this point. Let's turn this into a conversation. You'll find me on Twitter. You'll find me on Telegram. Both, I'm at Chase Raz. I hope this conversation keeps going. You can also comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What am I not thinking about? That's what I'm really interested in, so that we can take your ideas that I'm not expressing and share them with the community and come up with a really good consensus of what should happen here. As for me, again, I'm leaning yes at this moment. Take care, everybody.